My name is Winnie, and at 62 years old, I thought I knew my son better than anyone else in this world. I was sitting alone in our favorite family restaurant, Miller's Diner, sipping my fresh orange juice after Dylan had just left. The familiar hum of conversation around me felt comforting, but there was this nagging feeling in my chest that something wasn't quite right about our meeting today. Little did I know that a security guard's quiet warning would completely shatter everything I believed about my own child and save my life in ways I never imagined possible. Before I tell you this story, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like button if you believe that sometimes strangers can save us from the people closest to us. Subscribe to hear more real stories like this one, because what happened next will make you question everything you think you know about family bonds. Raising Dylan alone wasn't easy, but I did it with every ounce of love I had in my heart. 15 years ago, when his father walked out on us, I made a promise to myself that my boy would never lack for anything. I worked double shifts at First National Bank, counting other people's money while carefully saving every penny for Dylan's future. He was my everything, my only child, and I poured all my hopes and dreams into watching him grow. But even as a little boy, there were signs I chose to ignore. Dylan had this way of telling stories that didn't quite add up, of making me feel guilty when I questioned him. When other kids got in trouble, somehow, Dylan was always the innocent victim. He had these big blue eyes that could melt your heart and a smile that made you forget your own name. I told myself he was just creative, just sensitive in a world that didn't understand him. When Dylan turned 18, he came to me with tears in his eyes, talking about his dreams of going to college. He needed money for tuition books, a laptop for his studies. I handed over $5,000 without hesitation, proud that my son was thinking about his education. 6 months later, I discovered he had never enrolled anywhere. Instead, he had been living it up with friends, partying, and spending money like water. That was just the beginning. Over the years, there were always emergencies, always opportunities that required my financial help. A car repair that turned out to be a down payment on a motorcycle he crashed 2 weeks later. Medical bills that were actually debts to people I didn't want to know about. Each time Dylan would look at me with those pleading eyes and remind me that I was all he had in this world. By now, I had given him close to $25,000 in total. Money I had scraped together from overtime hours, skipped vacations, and careful budgeting. Money that was supposed to be for my retirement for the little house by the lake I had always dreamed of. But Dylan was my son, and mothers sacrifice for their children, don't they? Today's meeting at Miller's Diner was supposed to be different. This time, Dylan said he had a real business opportunity, a chance to open a sporting goods store with his girlfriend. This time, he promised would be the last time he ever needed my help. This time, he would pay me back everything he owed with interest. As I sat there in our usual booth by the window, watching the afternoon sun filter through the checkered curtains, I had already made up my mind. I was going to say no. I was going to tell my 26-year-old son that the Bank of Mom was officially closed. I just prayed I would have the strength to stick to my decision when I looked into those familiar blue eyes. Dylan walked into Miller's Diner at exactly 2:30, just like we had planned. Even from across the room, he commanded attention. At 26, he had grown into the kind of man who could charm his way into or out of almost any situation. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his clothes expensive and well-fitted. He moved with the confidence of someone who had never really faced consequences for his actions. "Mom." His voice carried that warm, affectionate tone that always made my heart skip a beat. He slid into the booth across from me and immediately reached for my hands. "You look beautiful. That blue sweater brings out your eyes just like I always told you." For the next 20 minutes, Dylan painted pictures with his words. He talked about our old Christmas mornings, how I used to read him bedtime stories, the way I always believed in him when no one else did. He made me laugh with impressions of our cranky old neighbor Mrs. Patterson and her 12 cats. This was Dylan at his finest, the son I remembered, and loved the boy who used to curl up next to me during thunderstorms. Then gradually, he shifted the conversation toward his future. He painted a vision of success and stability that sounded almost too good to be true. The sporting goods store wasn't just a business idea, he explained. His girlfriend Sarah had connections in the industry. They had already found the perfect location, negotiated with suppliers, even designed the layout. All they needed was $35,000 to secure the lease and initial inventory. "I know what you're thinking, Mom," he said, his voice dropping to that vulnerable tone I knew so well. "I know I haven't always made the best choices with money, but this is different. This is real. Sarah's father is willing to co-sign the loan, but we need the down payment first. I can pay you back everything with 20% interest within 6 months." I felt the familiar tug of war between my heart and my head. The numbers he mentioned made my stomach clench. $35,000 was nearly half of my remaining retirement savings. But the way he talked about Sarah, about their future together, about finally becoming the man I always knew he could be, it made me want to believe. "Dylan," I said carefully, "what about the money I've already lent you? What about the car repair that turned out to be something else entirely? What about the medical emergency that wasn't really medical?" His face shifted just slightly, but I caught it. For a split second, I saw something cold flicker behind his eyes before the warmth returned. "Mom, I understand why you're hesitant. I really do. Those situations were complicated, and I should have been more upfront with you. But I was embarrassed, you know. I didn't want to disappoint you more than I already had." The conversation continued for another hour, with Dylan expertly weaving between charm, guilt, and promises. He talked about how hard it was to be a young man trying to make his way in the world without a father figure. He reminded me of all the sacrifices I had made for him, how much he appreciated everything, how this opportunity would finally let him pay me back for all of it. When I continued to hesitate, his approach shifted subtly. "I thought you believed in me, Mom. I thought you wanted to see me succeed. If my own mother doesn't trust me enough to invest in my future, how can I expect anyone else to?" The guilt hit exactly where he intended it to. This was Dylan's greatest skill, making me feel like the bad guy for having reasonable doubts about unreasonable requests. But something felt different this time. Maybe it was the way he kept checking his watch, or how his charm felt more practiced than genuine, or the fact that he hadn't asked about my health or my life even once during our entire conversation. Finally, Dylan seemed to sense that his usual tactics weren't working as well as they used to. He leaned back in the booth and sighed deeply. "You know what, Mom? I get it. I really do. I haven't always been the son you deserved, and I understand if you need time to think about this. Maybe I should just figure out another way. I don't want to pressure you into anything you're not comfortable with." This reverse psychology was new, and it almost worked. The idea of my son struggling to find another way, possibly getting involved with dangerous people for money, made my chest tighten with worry. But I forced myself to stay strong. "I do need time to think, Dylan. This is a lot of money, and I need to be smart about my future too." He nodded sadly, gathering his jacket and standing up. "I understand completely. I'll figure something else out. Don't worry about me, Mom. I always land on my feet, right?" He kissed my forehead gently. "I love you more than anything in this world. Never forget that." As I watched him walk away, I felt that familiar ache of maternal guilt mixed with relief. I had held my ground, but at what cost? What if this really was his chance to turn his life around, and I was the one standing in his way? The restaurant felt quieter after Dylan left, though the lunch crowd was still buzzing around me. I sat there, staring at my half-empty glass of orange juice, my mind spinning with doubt and confusion. Had I made the right choice? Was I being a supportive mother or a suspicious old woman? The questions churned in my stomach like acid. I decided I needed more time to think, so I ordered another glass of fresh orange juice and tried to sort through my feelings. The familiar comfort of Miller's Diner usually helped me process difficult decisions. I had been coming here for over a decade, ever since Dylan was in high school. The red vinyl booths, the black and white checkered floor, the smell of coffee and home-cooked meals. It all felt like a safe harbor where I could figure out my next move. That's when Marcus approached my table. I had seen him around the restaurant for years, a tall African-American man in his mid-50s who worked security and helped with various tasks around the diner. He always had a kind smile and a gentle way about him, the sort of person who made you feel safer just by being present. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one else was listening. "I hope you don't mind me saying something, but I felt like I had to speak up." His voice was soft, but serious, and something in his tone made my blood run cold. "What is it, Marcus?" I had learned his name over the years of casual greetings and small talk. He pulled out the chair across from me, the same one Dylan had just vacated, and sat down carefully. "I saw your son put something in your drink while you were in the restroom. I've been watching him since he got here because something about his behavior seemed off, and I'm glad I did." The world seemed to tilt sideways. "What do you mean, put something in my drink?" Marcus kept his voice low and steady. "I was standing by the kitchen door when you got up to use the restroom about 15 minutes ago. Your son looked around to make sure no one was watching. Then he pulled out a small packet from his jacket pocket. He poured white powder into your orange juice and stirred it with his finger real quick before you came back." I stared down at my glass, the innocent-looking orange liquid suddenly seeming like poison. My hands started trembling, and I could feel my heart hammering against my ribs. "Are you absolutely sure?" "Yes, ma'am. I've been working security for 10 years, and I know suspicious behavior when I see it." The way he kept checking over his shoulder, the quick movements, the way he tried to position himself so the powder wouldn't be visible to anyone else at the table. This wasn't accidental. The implications hit me like a freight train. Dylan hadn't just been trying to manipulate me emotionally for money. He had been planning to drug me. But why? What was his real plan? The questions cascaded through my mind, each one more terrifying than the last. Marcus reached across the table and gently moved my glass away from me. "Don't drink any more of that. I already called the police, but I wanted to warn you first. Are you feeling okay? Any dizziness, nausea, or unusual drowsiness?" I took a mental inventory of my body. I had only taken a few sips since returning from the restroom, but now that I was looking for it, I could feel a slight, heavy feeling behind my eyes. Maybe a little tired, but I thought it was just the stress of our conversation. "We need to get you some water and maybe call an ambulance to be safe," Marcus said, flagging down our waitress. "Whatever he put in there, it's already starting to affect you, and we don't know how much or what kind of drug it was." As the reality of the situation sank in, I felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with any drug. My own son, the child I had carried for 9 months, nursed through countless illnesses, loved unconditionally for 26 years, had tried to poison me. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain I had ever experienced. Marcus stayed with me while we waited for the paramedics, talking calmly and helping me process what had happened. "I've seen this before," he told me quietly. "About 6 months ago, there was an elderly gentleman who came in with his nephew. Same kind of setup, same kind of powder. Turned out to be a heavy sedative mixed with something else. The nephew's plan was to make it look like the old man had a medical episode, then take him home and clean out his bank accounts while he was unconscious." The pieces of a horrifying puzzle began falling into place in my mind. Dylan's questions about my bank accounts, my retirement savings, my life insurance policy. His insistence on meeting at a restaurant instead of my house where neighbors might see what happened. His careful timing, his escape plan, his fake concern about my well-being. As the paramedics checked my vital signs and the police took Marcus's statement, my mind raced backward through recent months searching for clues I had missed. The picture that emerged made me feel sick with realization and fear. 3 weeks ago, Dylan had asked detailed questions about my bank accounts. He wanted to know which bank I used, whether I did online banking, if I had written down my passwords anywhere. At the time, I thought he was just concerned about my financial security as I got older. Now I understood he was conducting reconnaissance. 2 months before that, he had started asking about my life insurance policy. Who was the beneficiary? How much was it worth? Did I have a will, and where did I keep it? Again, I had interpreted this as a son's natural concern for his aging mother's affairs. The reality was far more sinister. Marcus sat with me in the ambulance holding my hand, while the EMTs monitored my blood pressure and heart rate. "The good news is that you didn't drink very much of it," one of them told me. "Your symptoms are mild, which means either it was a small dose or you stopped drinking before it could fully affect you." But the physical effects were nothing compared to the emotional devastation. As the fog in my brain started to clear, I began to understand the full scope of what Dylan had planned. This wasn't just about stealing money from me while I was unconscious. The amount of sedative, the isolated location, the fact that he had asked about my life insurance, it all pointed to something much worse. Marcus seemed to read my thoughts. "I think you should call someone to stay with you for a while. Family, a friend, someone you trust. And you definitely need to contact your bank and change all your passwords and security information." From the hospital, I called my sister Janet, who lived 2 states away. Between tears, I explained what had happened. She was on a plane within 4 hours. I also called my bank and discovered something that made my blood run even colder. There had been 3 attempts to access my accounts online in the past week, all of them unsuccessful because the password attempts were wrong. Dylan had been trying to break into my finances for days. The police officer who interviewed me was Detective Sarah Reeves, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes but a serious demeanor. "Mrs. Patterson, I need to ask you some difficult questions about your son's recent behavior. Have you noticed anything else unusual? Any other requests for money questions about your assets or attempts to isolate you from friends and family?" As I answered her questions, a pattern emerged that I had been too blind to see. Dylan had been gradually separating me from my social circle. He would make snide comments about my friends, suggesting they were just using me or didn't really care about me. He had convinced me to skip the last 2 family reunions, claiming he needed my emotional support during those weekends for various crises that never quite materialized. He had also been testing my daily routines, asking what time I got home from work, whether I always went to Miller's Diner on Sunday afternoons, if I ever told anyone where I was going when I left the house. At the time, his questions seemed like natural conversation. Now I realized he had been studying my habits like a predator studies prey. Detective Reeves took detailed notes and assured me they would investigate thoroughly. "The good news is that we have a witness and physical evidence. The restaurant's security cameras will show your son tampering with your drink and will test the remaining liquid to identify exactly what substance he used." As the evening wore on and the drugs completely cleared my system, I was left with a terrible clarity. My son hadn't just been planning to rob me. Based on the questions about life insurance and the amount of sedative Marcus had seen him use, Dylan had been planning to kill me. The child I loved more than life itself had been willing to end my life for money. The next few days passed in a blur of police interviews, legal consultations, and painful realizations. Janet stayed with me fielding phone calls and helping me navigate the practical aspects of my situation. Together, we met with Detective Reeves and learned more about Dylan's plan than I ever wanted to know. The security footage from Miller's Diner was clear and damning. It showed Dylan pulling a small envelope from his jacket, looking around carefully, then dumping white powder into my orange juice while I was in the restroom. The lab analysis revealed it was a combination of powerful sedatives that in the amount he used could have caused respiratory failure in someone my age and size. But Marcus and I weren't content to wait for the legal system to handle everything. We developed our own plan to get a full confession and protect other potential victims. Marcus suggested we set up a controlled meeting where Dylan would think his original plan had worked, giving him the opportunity to reveal his true intentions while being recorded. I called Dylan 2 days after the incident, my hands shaking as I dialed his number. "Honey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've been thinking about our conversation, and I want to help you with the business. Can we meet at Miller's Diner again? I'll bring my checkbook this time." Dylan's excitement was palpable through the phone. "Really, Mom? You mean it? Oh, thank you. I knew you believed in me. What changed your mind?" "I realized you're right. I lied, hating every word. You're my son, and I should support your dreams. Let's meet Sunday at the same time." Detective Reeves and Marcus worked together to set up surveillance equipment throughout the restaurant. Hidden cameras would capture everything, and Marcus would be positioned where he could intervene if things went wrong. I would wear a wire to ensure clear audio recording of whatever Dylan said. During the days leading up to our meeting, I struggled with a complex mix of emotions. Part of me still hoped there was some explanation, some way this could all be a misunderstanding. But the rational part of my mind knew better. The evidence was too clear, the pattern too obvious. I also had to face some uncomfortable truths about myself. How had I enabled Dylan's behavior for so many years? How many red flags had I ignored because I wanted to believe in the good in my son? How much of this situation was my fault for not setting boundaries earlier? Janet helped me work through these feelings. "Winnie, you loved your son the way a mother should love her child. You can't blame yourself for not expecting him to try to kill you. That's not normal behavior, and it's not your fault that you didn't see it coming." The weekend before our planned meeting, I took care of practical matters. I changed all my banking information, moved most of my money to a new account Dylan couldn't access, and updated my will to remove him as beneficiary. I also wrote letters to Janet and my closest friends explaining the situation in case something went wrong. Most importantly, I had to prepare myself mentally for what I might learn about my son. Detective Reeves warned me that when people think they've gotten away with something, they often reveal more than they intend to. "Be prepared to hear things that will be very difficult to process," she told me. "Your son may say things about his feelings toward you, his motivations, or his plans that will be painful to hear." Sunday afternoon arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood perfectly. I sat in the same booth at Miller's Diner, wearing the tiny recording device Detective Reeves had given me. My hands trembled slightly as I ordered my orange juice, knowing that this time I was completely safe, but still feeling the psychological impact of what had happened in this same spot just a week earlier. Dylan arrived right on time, practically bouncing with energy and excitement. He looked more relaxed than I had seen him in months, clearly believing his plan was about to pay off. He kissed my cheek and slid into the booth with the confidence of someone who thought he had already won. "I brought all the paperwork," he said, pulling out a folder thick with official-looking documents. "Sarah's father helped us put together a proper business proposal. I want you to see exactly where your investment is going and how we plan to pay you back." For the next 30 minutes, Dylan played the role of devoted son perfectly. He talked about his gratitude for everything I had done for him, his excitement about finally becoming successful, his plans to take care of me in my old age. He was charming, enthusiastic, and completely convincing. If I hadn't known what I knew, I might have been swept up in his vision of our bright future together. When I excused myself to go to the restroom exactly as we had planned, I could practically feel Dylan's anticipation. Through the hidden cameras, Marcus and Detective Reeves would be watching him prepare to drug me again. Sure enough, when I returned 5 minutes later, Dylan was sitting back in his seat with a satisfied smile on his face. "You know, Mom," he said as I sat down, "I was thinking about how much this means to me. Having your support, knowing you believe in me, it's everything I ever wanted. I picked up my glass and pretended to take a sip, then set it down and leaned back in the booth. I'm just happy to finally be able to help you succeed, honey. Over the next 20 minutes, I gradually began acting more and more drowsy. I let my eyelids flutter, spoke more slowly, and occasionally seemed to lose my train of thought mid-sentence. Dylan watched this performance with growing satisfaction, occasionally asking if I was feeling all right, but clearly pleased with what he was seeing. As I continued to succumb to the drugs, Dylan's mask began to slip. His concern became more perfunctory. His attention turned to my purse and the checkbook he knew I had brought. When I let my head rest on my hand and closed my eyes, he leaned forward and spoke more quietly. You know what, Mom? I'm really sorry it had to be this way. I tried to do this the easy way, but you were being so stubborn about the money. I didn't want to hurt you, but I've got debts you don't understand. People who will hurt me if I don't pay them back. My blood turned to ice, but I forced myself to remain still and keep my breathing steady. Dylan continued, his voice taking on a tone I had never heard before. The truth is, I've been planning this for months. Ever since I found out about your life insurance policy and how much you've got saved up. $50,000 isn't enough to solve my problems, but $250,000 from the insurance, plus everything in your accounts, that's enough to start fresh somewhere else. He paused, and I could hear him moving around in his seat. I looked into it, you know. What would happen if you just never woke up? They'd call it natural causes. A heart attack maybe, or a stroke. Older women living alone, it happens all the time. No one would question it, especially with your son grieving and handling all the arrangements. The casual way he discussed my death made my stomach lurch, but I had to stay in character. Dylan was confessing to premeditated murder, and we needed every word on record. I even picked out your funeral dress, he continued, his voice now completely devoid of warmth. That blue one you wore to Cousin Linda's wedding. You always said it was your favorite. See, I'm not heartless. I want you to look beautiful when you go. That's when Detective Reeves and two uniformed officers entered the restaurant. Dylan was so focused on gloating over what he thought was my unconscious form that he didn't notice them until they were standing right beside our booth. Dylan Patterson, you're under arrest for attempted murder and conspiracy to commit fraud. Dylan's face went through a series of expressions I will never forget. First confusion, then shock, then desperate calculation as he tried to figure out what had gone wrong. When I opened my eyes and sat up straight, his confusion turned to pure rage. You set me up, he hissed, his handsome face twisting into something ugly and unfamiliar. You actually set me up, your own son. You tried to kill me, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. You were planning to kill me for insurance money. As the officers read him his rights and led him away in handcuffs, Dylan's final words to me were not an apology or an expression of love, but a curse. You'll regret this, old woman. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Marcus appeared at my side as I watched my son being loaded into the police car. You did the right thing, he said gently. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you saved your own life and probably the lives of other people he might have hurt. The trial took place 8 months later, and Dylan was sentenced to 15 years in prison for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit fraud, and several related charges. The evidence was overwhelming, the confession complete, and his lack of remorse apparent to everyone in the courtroom. But the real work of healing began long before the legal process ended. In the weeks following Dylan's arrest, I joined a support group for family members affected by domestic violence and abuse. I had never thought of myself as an abuse victim, but the counselor helped me understand that financial and emotional manipulation are forms of abuse, especially when they escalate to threats of violence. Marcus became more than just the security guard who saved my life. He became a true friend, someone who understood the complexity of my emotions without judgment. He had seen this kind of family betrayal before, and he helped me navigate the guilt, anger, and grief that came with accepting the truth about my son. The hardest part, I told the support group during one of our meetings, is mourning someone who's still alive. I have to grieve the son I thought I had while accepting the reality of who he actually is. 6 months after the trial, I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I started volunteering with an organization that helped elderly people avoid financial scams and family fraud. My experience with Dylan had given me insights that could help other people recognize the warning signs I had missed for so many years. Teaching other seniors about financial safety became my new purpose. I spoke at community centers, senior living facilities, and community college seminars about the red flags of financial manipulation. I shared my story not for sympathy, but to help other parents and grandparents trust their instincts when something felt wrong. 2 years after Dylan went to prison, I met Walter at one of my financial safety seminars. He was a widower, 68 years old, whose own grandson had tried to steal his identity. We understood each other's pain in a way that created an unexpected bond. Walter taught me that not every relationship has to be built on manipulation and need. Sometimes, two people can simply enjoy each other's company without hidden agendas. I never visited Dylan in prison, though he wrote me letters for the first year of his sentence. I read each one carefully, looking for any sign of genuine remorse or self-reflection, but they were all variations on the same theme. He was the victim, I was unreasonable, and he deserved my help because he was my son. I eventually stopped reading them and had my lawyer handle any necessary communication. On quiet evenings, I sometimes wrote my own letters to Dylan, letters I never sent. In them, I tried to explain the difference between loving someone and enabling their destructive behavior. I told him about the support group, about Walter, about the people I was helping avoid what I had experienced. Writing these letters helped me process my feelings and find forgiveness, not for Dylan's benefit, but for my own peace of mind. The most important lesson I learned was about boundaries. For years, I had confused unconditional love with unconditional acceptance of harmful behavior. I learned that you can love someone while still protecting yourself from them. You can hope for their redemption while acknowledging they may never change. You can grieve the relationship you wanted while building the life you deserve. Marcus and I still have lunch at Miller's Diner sometimes, though we sit at a different booth now. He tells me about his grandchildren. I tell him about my volunteer work and my growing relationship with Walter. We both understand that some guardian angels wear security uniforms and pay attention when others look the other way. 3 years have passed since that terrible Sunday afternoon, and I can honestly say I'm happier now than I was before Dylan's arrest. It took losing the son I thought I had to find the woman I was meant to be. I have real friends now, people who care about my well-being without wanting anything from me. I have a romantic relationship built on mutual respect and genuine affection. Most importantly, I have self-respect and the knowledge that I'm strong enough to protect myself when necessary. The strangers in my support group became chosen family. Walter became a companion who enhances my life rather than demanding sacrifices from it. Marcus became living proof that sometimes the people who save us are the ones we least expect. Sometimes the people we love most in this world are the ones capable of hurting us most deeply. But there are also strangers who appear like guardian angels exactly when we need them most. The key is learning to trust your instincts, set healthy boundaries, and never be afraid to ask for help when something feels wrong. Because in the end, protecting yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary, and sometimes it's the most loving thing you can do for everyone involved. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice between helping someone you love and protecting yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about family relationships and finding strength in unexpected places. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to set boundaries even with family. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that you deserve relationships built on love and respect, not manipulation and fear. Stay safe, trust your instincts, and never forget that you are worthy of genuine care and protection.